I
The
need to see the
streetlights
contents
flickered,
of that folder
one after
immediately.
another, casting harsh
You
rectangles
do not
of
have
yellow
probable
across
cause,
the
officer.
rain-soaked asphalt.
I know my rights.
Zara Williams clutched a leather
You
briefcase,
can lean in all
the
you
sharp
want, but
edges
my
biting
rights
into
do
her
not
palm
change based
as the
on your
echo of
intimidation
approaching
tactics.
footsteps grew louder behind
I
her.
suggest you remember
The
that.
evening had been ordinary, a school fundraiser, polite conversation, the faint clink of silverware, until the officer appeared. "Step aside, Miss," a low, clipped voice demanded. Zara turned, blinking through the rain, to see a uniformed man narrowing his eyes at her. His badge gleamed under the streetlight, but there was a hardness in his tone that made the hairs on her neck stiffen. "I'm going home," she said, her voice measured. "Not tonight," he said, stepping closer. "You're coming with me." Panic flared in her chest. "Excuse me? For what?" He smirked, a slow, cruel curl of the lip. "You know exactly why." The words fell like a hammer. Around them, the city moved in blurred motion. Honking horns, distant laughter, the whisper of rain against the sidewalk. Zara's mind raced, memory and disbelief clashing. She could feel every eye on them, the pedestrians who hesitated, the taxi driver who stared. The officer's grip on her arm tightened. She looked up, searching for recognition, justice, even a hint of humanity, and found none. "You're under arrest," he said. And then a single, piercing thought cut through her fear. The woman he was ignoring, the power he had never anticipated, the mother who would change everything. Zara's breath hitched. She knew in that instant that this night would not end quietly. Her phone vibrated. A message flashed. One word, "Mom." Zara Williams hurried down the slick sidewalk, the heels of her shoes clicking sharply against Puddle Street concrete. Rain ran in thin rivers from her umbrella, streaking the polished leather of her briefcase. The night had begun with polite conversations at the school fundraiser, gentle laughter blending with the soft clatter of cutlery. She had been distracted by a discussion on future donations when she noticed him, the officer, standing beneath the flickering streetlight, arms crossed, eyes fixed. "Step aside, miss," he said, voice flat, carrying an authority that seemed heavier than the uniform. Zara froze. Her umbrella tilted slightly, shielding her from the rain but offering no protection from the scrutiny. "I'm going home," she replied evenly, forcing calm into her tone. He stepped forward, boots splashing in shallow puddles. "Not tonight. You're coming with me." "Excuse me." Her pulse spiked. She could feel the grip of his gaze like a hand around her chest. "You know why," he said, the words slow and deliberate, each syllable a puncture. The street seemed to blur around her. A taxi paused, its driver staring. A mother tugged her child away. A jogger froze mid-stride. No one intervened. She swallowed, jaw tight. "I haven't done anything." His smirk didn't reach his eyes. "You're under arrest." The words hung, a sentence, a verdict, a declaration of power. Zara's mind raced. Her identity, her life, her family's prominence, none of it seemed to matter to him. Only the color of her skin, the shape of her face, the slight tremor in her stance. Her hand brushed her phone in her bag. She considered calling her mother, but the officer's grip on her elbow tightened. Metal buttons pressed into her coat. She flinched. "You're wasting time," he said, his voice low, warning, almost enjoying the fear he invoked. Inside, Zara's thoughts collided. Disbelief, anger, humiliation. How quickly the world could reduce her from a student, a daughter, a person with agency, to an object under suspicion, under control, under threat. The officer guided her toward the squad car parked under the yellow haze of the street lamp. The doors reflected the wet street, a distorted mirror of the scene. Her, him, the indifferent city. A bystander coughed, a soft sound lost in the patter of rain. She glanced up, hoping for recognition, advocacy, acknowledgement. There was none. She was shoved into the vehicle, the leather seat cold and unyielding. The door slammed. Every click of the locks, every turn of the siren knob underscored the power imbalance, visible, undeniable, suffocating. Her phone vibrated against her chest, a tiny, insistent rhythm. She pulled it out, eyes narrowing at the screen. "Mom." Her breath caught. The name, the timing, the implication, everything shifted. This wasn't just a routine arrest. This was a miscalculation. Rain streaked the windshield, distorting the world outside into blurred lines of yellow and gray. Zara stared straight ahead, mind racing, heart hammering. She knew the night had only begun, and that what came next could change everything. The fluorescent light hummed overhead, cold and unrelenting. Zara sat on the metal chair, knees pressed together, hands folded on her briefcase. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant and damp concrete. Outside, muffled voices echoed down the hallway, a dull reminder that the world continued beyond these walls, indifferent, unseeing. The door opened abruptly. Officer Carter entered, his badge catching the light. He leaned against the table, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "Miss Williams," he began, voice neutral but carrying an edge, "do you understand why you're here?" "I don't," Zara said, tone steady despite the racing pulse in her chest. "I've done nothing illegal." He smirked, a slow curl of amusement. "That's what they all say. Tell me, do you usually attend school events alone?" "I was with my mother's friends. Several parents were there. Witnesses can confirm." He tapped the table. "You're young, bold, and alone in this moment. Circumstances make people suspicious." Zara clenched her fists under the table. "Suspicion isn't a crime." Carter leaned closer, voice dropping. "It can be, depending on how you look at it. And how you look." He glanced at her skin, the slight tilt of her chin, the deliberate calm she tried to maintain. "People see patterns." Zara's mind burned. Every syllable dripped with judgment she hadn't owned. Every gesture, every glance, carried unspoken assumptions. Black, young, female, dangerous. She took a shallow breath. "I am not the person you're imagining." "You could be," he said, tone soft, almost casual. "That's why we ask questions." The door creaked, a narrow gap of distraction. A uniformed officer slid a phone across the table. "Call," he said tersely. "Your mother wants to speak with you." Zara lifted the receiver. The moment she heard the crisp, commanding tone of her mother, a wave of clarity cut through fear. "Zara." Her mother's voice was steady, no tremor of panic, only sharp focus. "Are you safe?" They're questioning me," Zara stammered, still aware of Carter's gaze. Carter shifted uneasily, noticing the authority in the words on the other end of the line. "Who is this?" he asked, trying to regain control. "My mother," Zara said, voice firm now. "She's an attorney. I suggest you reconsider your approach." A flicker of unease crossed Carter's face. His smirk faltered. "Attorney or not, you're here." "You're ignoring facts and witnesses," her mother said sharply. "I want my daughter released immediately, or I will escalate this through every legal channel available." Carter pressed his lips together, a subtle attempt at composure. Zara's pulse steadied. The presence of her mother, even through a phone line, shifted the atmosphere. Power, he realized, was not entirely on his side. "I'll need to verify," he began. "Do it," her mother interrupted, unwavering. "But make no mistake. I will see every action scrutinized, every word recorded. Your conduct is on notice." Carter's jaw tightened. He stepped back, brushing off the tension with a forced cough. Zara exhaled, relief tempered by anger and humiliation. This wasn't just about her. It was about the assumptions, the casual bias that had led to this moment. She ended the call, her mother's words echoing, calm, authoritative, untouchable. Carter studied her, a subtle shift in posture, unease creeping in. "You're lucky," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "I don't feel lucky," Zara said, meeting his gaze evenly. "I feel targeted, and I intend to understand why." He left the room, the door clicking behind him. Zara's reflection shimmered on the metal table, her silhouette sharp against the sterile light. She thought of the night, the public gaze, the rush of footsteps, and the lingering rain. None of it would be erased. In that silence, she realized something vital. Fear could be managed, anger could be channeled, and injustice, while raw, could be confronted. She was not powerless. The hum of the fluorescent light filled the room as she prepared herself. The first line of defense had been her mother's voice, the second her own resolve. The third would be every fact, every witness, every moment of exposure she could command. Carter would learn, sooner or later, that assumptions and uniforms did not equate to authority over truth. The precinct hallway smelled of stale coffee and printer ink. Zara followed a uniformed officer down the narrow corridor, the sharp echo of her heels on the linoleum marking every step. Intermittent fluorescent lights flickered above, throwing shadows that made the walls feel closer, the ceiling lower. The officer pushed open a door labeled Interview Room 3. Inside, Zara sat at a table, chair scraping lightly against the tile. Her briefcase sat beside her like a tether to the world outside. She could hear the muffled conversations of other detainees, the distant thud of slamming doors, but her focus remained razor-sharp. Her phone vibrated again. She pulled it out. The screen read, Mong. The voice that answered was crisp, unwavering. Zara? I'm here. Her words faltered. Tell me exactly what happened. Her mother said, tone precise, calm, controlled. Zara recounted the encounter, Officer Carter, the arrest, the indifferent bystanders. Dialogue flowed in rapid, clip bursts. Her mother interrupted occasionally, asking for names, times, and specific phrases. Every question was a probe, every answer a reinforcement of accountability. You're alone in that precinct? Her mother asked. Yes. No witnesses inside, but outside, people saw. Good, she said. Document it. Keep everything. Every name, every word. Zara noticed Carter hovering just beyond the doorframe, jaw tight. He had overheard the fragments of conversation, and his usual smirk was gone, replaced by a flicker of unease. Power shifted subtly in the room. You understand who you're dealing with? Her mother asked. Yes, Zara replied, voice firm, but I won't be intimidated. Her mother's words sharpened. This isn't just about you. It's about precedent, procedure, accountability. His used to assumptions and compliance. He won't have either with us. Carter's hand twitched on the table edge, the veneer of authority cracking. He muttered, I wasn't aware. You should be aware, her mother interrupted, cold and precise. Your actions have consequences. Every department has oversight. Every step is being observed. The room became taut, silence filled with unspoken tension. Zara felt her fear convert into a quiet strength. Every microaggression, every coded glance from Carter now existed as evidence, a ledger of misconduct that could not be ignored. Release her, her mother commanded finally, tone absolute. Carter shifted, a bead of sweat forming at his temple. I'll need authorization, he said, voice strained. Authorization will come, her mother said. Internal affairs is already involved. One misstep from you now, and it will be on record. You understand me? Yes, he muttered, barely audible. Zara ended the call, hands trembling but mind focused. She had seen the first cracks in the officer's composure. She had seen power tested. She had also felt the weight of her mother's presence, a legal, moral, and societal shield that amplified her own agency. Carter remained silent for a moment, staring at the table. His usual confidence had eroded under the weight of her mother's authority. Zara realized that the officer had underestimated not just her, but her family, her preparation, and the inevitable social scrutiny that would follow. You will wait here, he said finally, tone clipped, attempting to regain control. Zara leaned back slightly, absorbing the room's fluorescent glare. She thought of the fundraiser, the night's rain, the city's indifferent gaze. Each piece of evidence she had, each witness, each recording of the incident, was a step toward accountability. And in that moment, she knew, the night was far from over, but the narrative had begun to shift. The officer's grip on perceived authority was faltering, and Zara, armed with information, witness testimony, and her mother's unyielding command, was poised to exploit every weakness. Outside, the precinct continued its hum of bureaucracy and tension. Inside, a subtle but irreversible power reversal had begun. By morning, the arrest footage had spread like wildfire. A passerby's phone, shaky in the rain, had captured every moment. Zara's calm defiance, the officer's grip, the slam of the squad car door. The video looped endlessly online, captions varying from outrage to disbelief, hashtags multiplying. #justice for Zara, #racism exposed, Police misconduct. Zara sat on the bench outside the precinct, her coat damp from the previous night's rain, phone in hand. Comments scrolled past in an endless stream. Some viewers criticized the officer's abuse of power. Others debated the nuances of procedure and bias. Each notification brought both satisfaction and discomfort, a reminder that a private humiliation had become public spectacle. Her mother arrived, black leather briefcase in hand, eyes calm but precise. She didn't approach with fanfare or anger. She moved with the quiet authority that had defined her career. "We have to manage the narrative," she said, checking the phone, scanning the viral posts. "Control the facts, document the witnesses, respond where necessary. But don't let the outrage distract you from procedure." Zara nodded, listening as her mother's words anchored her. They entered the precinct together, bypassing the typical bureaucratic chaos. Officers looked up briefly, some whispering, others avoiding eye contact. The shift in perception was immediate. People noticed power, authority, and influence. Inside the media room, clips from local news channels played on multiple screens. Anchors repeated the same sequence. Zara being escorted to the squad car, the officer's tense stance, bystanders frozen in shock. Dialogue between reporters dissected every movement, every expression, framing the story for public consumption. "Your visibility complicates him," her mother said softly, eyes on the monitors. "Now, he has to consider not only policy but optics, social pressure. This is leverage." Zara's mind processed it rapidly. Footage, witnesses, news cycles, social media amplification. The officer's power, once absolute in the dark corner of the street, was now subject to scrutiny by millions. A precinct officer approached, hesitant. He wants to speak." "Not yet," her mother said. "Let him stew. His own arrogance is beginning to work against him." In a side office, Zara sent messages to classmates who had witnessed a fundraiser, compiling statements, timestamps, and observations. Dialogue with her peers was tense, urgent. "Did you see how he pushed me?" "Yes, and the driver, and the teacher, write it down." Each account became a piece of the emerging evidence, a reinforcement of the truth amidst public noise. Hours passed. The news cycle turned relentless. Clips of Zara's calm stance contrasted sharply with Carter's rigidity, the disparity igniting online discourse. Narration highlighted the broader context. Systemic racial bias, bystander indifference, the slow wheels of bureaucratic power. By late afternoon, Carter's superior called him into a separate office. Zara and her mother watched from the corridor, observing the flickers of irritation, uncertainty, and fear. Power, once unilateral, was being tested in real time. "They're using social media against me," Carter muttered, voice low, defensive. "They're using facts against you," his superior corrected, tone deliberate. "Prepare a report. Internal affairs will review. Don't make further public missteps." Zara exhaled slowly, watching him retreat, tension still palpable. Dialogue, rumors, online posts, all were converging into a network of accountability he could no longer control. Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder. "This is only the beginning. The world will see him for what he is. But you must remain composed. Every statement, every witness, every image matters." Zara understood. Rage alone could not win. Strategy, meticulous documentation, and persistence would. The viral outrage was a weapon, but it required discipline. Her mother's calm focus illuminated the path forward. As the evening settled, city lights reflecting off wet streets, Zara looked out the precinct window. The rain had stopped, leaving the pavement slick and mirrored. She felt the weight of both exposure and responsibility. Every bystander, every witness, every viral clip was a reminder of the cost of public attention, but also of its power. The officer had underestimated her once. Now, millions were watching. The precinct smelled of recycled air and tension. Zara and her mother entered the officer's office, their presence immediate, undeniable. The room had a faint hum of fluorescent lights, a faint chill from the air conditioning, but it was a charged silence between the three of them that weighed heaviest. Carter looked up from his desk, attempting the familiar smirk, but it faltered under the weight of her mother's gaze. "You're making quite a scene," he said, voice strained, forcing casualness. "My daughter was wrongfully arrested. her mother replied, tone sharp and precise. Every procedure you ignored, every assumption you acted on, it will be documented. Carter leaned back slightly, a subtle attempt to reclaim authority. It was protocol, he said, words carefully measured. Protocol, her mother echoed, incredulous. You had no evidence, no probable cause, only bias. How is that protocol? Zara spoke quietly but firmly. You assumed I was guilty because of my skin. That's not procedure, that's prejudice. The officer's jaw tightened. You're making accusations. I'm making observations, her mother corrected, and they will be part of the official complaint. Carter's hand hovered over his desk, restless, betraying his unease. The room seemed smaller, the walls closer, as if the tension was a physical presence. I didn't know, he began, but the words lacked conviction. Zara's voice cut through the pause. You didn't know what it means to judge a person by their actions, not their appearance. You will learn. Her mother leaned forward. And you will answer for it. Every microaggression, every dismissive remark, every illegal order is on record. Do you understand? Carter swallowed, a subtle nod, but his eyes darted briefly to the door, the possibility of exposure already dawning. Yes, he said finally, voice brittle. Zara's heart pounded, adrenaline mixing with lingering fear. Yet she maintained composure. Every gesture, every phrase, was evidence that she would not be cowed. Dialogue became a weapon, each line carved accountability into the room's air. Her mother continued, describing the formal complaints filed, the involvement of internal affairs, and the scrutiny of the local press. Carter's usual defenses crumbled under the weight of visibility and impending investigation. You misjudged the situation, her mother said, voice unwavering. And now it will be reviewed by people who do not tolerate assumptions or bias. The officer rubbed his temple, realizing the depth of exposure. His previous confidence, the casual power derived from uniform and authority, was eroding. Every action, every word, every hesitated glance could be scrutinized, amplified, and condemned. Zara observed silently, absorbing the scene, cataloging every nuance. Dialogue revealed the underlying cracks, the fissures in control, the subtle fear that belied his bluster. The procedural reality was shifting. You will remain on duty, her mother concluded, but understand, oversight has begun. Your conduct is no longer private. Every interaction will be recorded, reviewed, and challenged if necessary. Carter nodded again, this time fully aware that his position was vulnerable. The power dynamics in the room had shifted irreversibly. As Zara and her mother left the office, the corridor felt lighter, less oppressive. Each step echoed with clarity. Authority unchecked could intimidate temporarily, but accountability, visibility, and strategy were stronger forces. Outside the precinct, the city moved on. Cars honked. Pedestrians passed, indifferent to the battle that had just concluded within the walls. But Zara and her mother carried a different reality, one where systemic power could be confronted, challenged, and exposed. The officer had returned to his post, but he was no longer untouchable. Every badge, every uniform, every assumed authority now had a counterweight, evidence, witnesses, and the unyielding presence of those unwilling to accept injustice silently. Zara exhaled as they stepped into the evening air. The rain had returned lightly, misting the pavement, leaving reflective trails like faint scars. The confrontation had not ended the story, but it had shifted the balance. She felt both the exhaustion and clarity of the moment. Justice would require persistence. Exposure alone was insufficient. And yet, the first tangible cracks in the officer's armor had appeared, an opening for accountability, for truth, for eventual resolution. The morning sun cut through the blinds of the Williams residence, painting stripes across the polished floor. Zara sat at the dining table, a laptop open before her, her mother pacing the room with deliberate precision. The house smelled faintly of brewed coffee, expensive paper, and the quiet hum of strategy unfolding. First, internal affairs, her mother said, voice clipped, commanding. We submit a full report, timeline, witnesses, videos, everything. No gaps. Every detail counts. Zara typed rapidly, compiling statements from classmates, parents, and teachers who had witnessed a fundraiser. Each line of dialogue, each recollection, became a building block of accountability. Next, press management. Her mother continued, "We control the narrative. Ensure the public sees facts, not assumptions. Use social media, verified sources. He thrives on anonymity. Visibility is leverage." Zara's phone buzzed constantly. News outlets requesting comments, classmates sending additional footage, bystanders offering statements. She responded efficiently, under her mother's watchful eye, her own frustration tempered by focus. "We'll need legal channels," her mother added, checking her planner. "Formal complaint to the department, request for reassignment of officer, and review of protocols. Make it airtight. He cannot manipulate procedure once oversight begins." Zara paused. "Do you think he understands the stakes yet?" Her mother's eyes narrowed. "He will. Pride and arrogance often blind officers. But law, evidence, and social scrutiny are harder to ignore. Every report we file reduces his room for maneuver. He will feel constrained, observed, exposed." Throughout the day, they coordinated with a network of contacts, journalists, former law enforcement officials, and legal advisors. Dialogue crackled over secure lines, strategy discussed with urgency, statement to be recorded, witnesses prepped, procedural loopholes anticipated. Every conversation was precise, factual, emotionally restrained, but strategically potent. By evening, Zara and her mother returned to the precinct, carrying formal complaints and documentation. Carter sat at his desk, noticeably tense, shuffling papers nervously. He avoided eye contact as they approached. "Officer Carter," her mother said, voice firm, "you are under formal investigation. Internal Affairs will review your actions. Your conduct will be scrutinized in every detail." Carter's hand trembled slightly. "I understand," he murmured. Zara spoke directly, voice steady. "You misjudged the situation, assumed guilt without evidence, and acted on bias. This will not go unchallenged." The officer's usual defenses faltered, replaced by unease. His authority, once absolute, was now mediated by procedure, witnesses, and media attention. Each recorded exchange, each statement from classmates, compounded his vulnerability. Outside the office, the precinct buzzed with subtle whispers. Colleagues noticed a shift, small gestures betraying awareness, a sidelong glance, a half smile, avoidance. The social hierarchy was adjusting in real time, informed by visibility and accountability. Later that night, Zara and her mother reviewed video footage again. Every angle, every expression, every gesture was catalogued. Dialogue between them dissected nuances. "Look at his hesitation, note the witnesses in the background. This will counter any denial." Her mother's tone remained calm but unwavering. "Persistence is essential. He cannot escape scrutiny. Patience, documentation, and public accountability will ensure consequences." Zara realized the depth of systemic bias and the strategies required to counter it. Rage alone could not dismantle entrenched power. Preparation, foresight, and discipline were necessary weapons. Each step they took, each conversation, each filing, built an insurmountable record. By nightfall, the first official notice of investigation had been delivered to Carter. He stared at the envelope, the weight of consequences pressing down. His habitual confidence was replaced by calculated caution. Every move he made would now be observed, documented, and, potentially, used against him. Zara exhaled, feeling both the tension of the ongoing battle and the empowerment that came from action. Systemic racism, she understood, did not vanish overnight, but it could be challenged, confronted, and exposed. And tonight, for the first time, she felt that exposure was irreversible. By morning, the arrest footage had spread like wildfire. A passerby's phone, shaky in the rain, had captured every moment. Zara's calm defiance, the officer's grip, the slam of the squad car door. The video looped endlessly online, captions varying from outrage to disbelief, hashtags multiplying, #justice for Zara, #racism exposed, #police misconduct. Zara sat on the bench outside the precinct, her coat damp from the previous night's rain, phone in hand. Comments scrolled past in an endless stream. Some viewers criticized the officer's abuse of power. Others debated the nuances of procedure and bias. Each notification brought both satisfaction and discomfort, a reminder that her private humiliation had become public spectacle. Her mother arrived, black leather briefcase in hand, eyes calm but precise. She didn't approach with fanfare or anger. She moved with the quiet authority that had defined her career. "We have to manage the narrative," she said, checking the phone, scanning the viral posts. "Control the facts, document the witnesses, respond where necessary. But don't let the outrage distract you from procedure." Zara nodded, listening as her mother's words anchored her. They entered the precinct together, bypassing the typical bureaucratic chaos. Officers looked up briefly, some whispering, others avoiding eye contact. The shift in perception was immediate. People noticed power, authority, and influence. Inside the media room, clips from local news channels played on multiple screens. Anchors repeated the same sequence. Zara being escorted to the squad car, the officer's tense stance, bystanders frozen in shock. Dialogue between reporters dissected every movement, every expression, framing the story for public consumption. "Your visibility complicates him," her mother said softly, eyes on the monitors. "Now, he has to consider not only policy but optics, social pressure. This is leverage." Zara's mind processed it rapidly. Footage, witnesses, news cycles, social media amplification. The officer's power, once absolute in the dark corner of the street, was now subject to scrutiny by millions. A precinct officer approached, hesitant. He wants to speak." "Not yet," her mother said. "Let him stew. His own arrogance is beginning to work against him." In a side office, Zara sent messages to classmates who had witnessed a fundraiser, compiling statements, timestamps, and observations. Dialogue with her peers was tense, urgent. "Did you see how he pushed me?" "Yes, and the driver, and the teacher, write it down." Each account became a piece of the emerging evidence, a reinforcement of the truth amidst public noise. Hours passed. The news cycle turned relentless. Clips of Zara's calm stance contrasted sharply with Carter's rigidity, the disparity igniting online discourse. Narration highlighted the broader context. Systemic racial bias, bystander indifference, the slow wheels of bureaucratic power. By late afternoon, Carter's superior called him into a separate office. Zara and her mother watched from the corridor, observing the flickers of irritation, uncertainty, and fear. Power, once unilateral, was being tested in real time. "They're using social media against me," Carter muttered, voice low, defensive. "They're using facts against you," his superior corrected, tone deliberate. "Prepare a report. Internal affairs will review. Don't make further public missteps." Zara exhaled slowly, watching him retreat, tension still palpable. Dialogue, rumors, online posts, all were converging into a network of accountability he could no longer control. Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder. "This is only the beginning. The world will see him for what he is. But you must remain composed. Every statement, every witness, every image matters." Zara understood. Rage alone could not win. Strategy, meticulous documentation, and persistence would. The viral outrage was a weapon, but it required discipline. Her mother's calm focus illuminated the path forward. As evening settled, city lights reflecting off wet streets, Zara looked out the precinct window. The rain had stopped, leaving the pavement slick and mirrored. She felt the weight of both exposure and responsibility. Every bystander, every witness, every viral clip was a reminder of the cost of public attention, but also of its power. The officer had underestimated her once. Now, millions were watching. The morning sun glinted off the courthouse windows, catching in shards of rain still clinging to the streets. Inside, the atmosphere was taut, deliberate. Media cameras lined the perimeter, capturing every movement, every reaction. Zara and her mother sat at the front of the room, notebooks open, prepared. Carter entered, rigid, aware of the cameras, the witnesses, the procedural weight pressing against him. The hearing began with the presentation of evidence. Video footage replayed in sharp clarity. The arrest, the officer's smirk, the public's frozen response, Zara's calm defiance. Dialogue between witnesses accompanied the clips. Students recounting precise words, teachers emphasizing procedural violations, bystanders noting the officer's unprovoked behavior. Carter's eyes flicked to the screen repeatedly, each replay a hammer of accountability. His voice, when he finally spoke, lacked conviction. "I acted in accordance with policy," he muttered, but the tremor betrayed his unease. A local journalist stepped forward, testimony recorded and cross-referenced. The public record confirmed procedural neglect, bias-driven escalation, and abuse of authority. These actions cannot be justified. Zara's mother addressed the panel with deliberate authority. Every statement is corroborated, every action documented. The system itself must respond to prevent recurrence. Authority is conditional, not absolute. The dialogue-heavy proceedings laid bare the officer's misconduct. Each objection he raised, each attempted justification, was countered by meticulously catalogued evidence, timestamps, witness accounts, surveillance footage, and social media documentation. Carter shifted uncomfortably. The veneer of control, once absolute, had dissolved under public and procedural scrutiny. Internal affairs, media attention, and social accountability intersected, leaving him exposed. Zara spoke briefly, voice steady. "Assumptions based on skin color, age, and gender are not lawful authority. They are prejudice. This exposure is necessary, not punitive. It is a mechanism of accountability." The panel deliberated, tension stretching each second. The officer's defensive posture, fidgeting fingers, and frequent glances toward the exit revealed the weight of impending consequences. Every word spoken in the room, every piece of evidence submitted, solidified the trajectory toward justice. By afternoon, a formal decision was announced. Carter would be suspended, mandatory retraining imposed, and a record of misconduct filed. Public exposure ensured reputational accountability as well. News outlets ran detailed segments dissecting every procedural failure. Dialogue on online commentary, and official statements reinforced the narrative. Abuse of authority, when documented and challenged, carries consequences. Zara exhaled quietly, relief tempered by the emotional toll. Public vindication had been achieved, yet trauma lingered. The confrontation, exposure, and scrutiny had reshaped her world, but at a personal cost, an enduring awareness of vulnerability under systemic bias. Her mother placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "This is accountability, not revenge. Justice is measured, deliberate, and procedural. Emotional satisfaction alone does not sustain change." Zara nodded, absorbing the lesson. Exposure had dismantled the immediate threat, but the larger societal patterns remained, requiring vigilance and strategic resistance. Dialogue, evidence, and public oversight had created a model for accountability, demonstrating that entrenched power could be confronted without succumbing to retaliation. Outside, the city moved in quiet rhythms. Cars passed, pedestrians hurried, but the ripples of the morning's proceedings extended further than visible perception. Institutional behavior had been questioned, authority tested, and systemic abuse publicly confronted. The officer, once unchallenged in uniform power, now faced the consequences of misjudgment, bias, and overreach. Zara understood the duality of victory. Justice was served, yet awareness of systemic injustice persisted, tempered by lived experience. The room was vast, sterile, and unyielding. Rows of chairs faced a panel of stern-faced officials, their expressions neutral masks that belied the weight of authority. Zara sat beside her mother, shoulders squared, notebook open, every sense sharpened. Officer Carter entered, uniform crisp, demeanor falsely composed, but tension threaded through his movements. The hearing began with formalities, names, positions, protocol. Then the testimony commenced. Witnesses recounted the arrest, the officer's casual assumption, the public spectacle, the humiliation inflicted. Dialogue dominated the room. Students, parents, bystanders, and even precinct staff described events with clarity and precision. Each statement underscored patterns of bias, microaggressions, and abuse of power. Carter leaned forward, voice defensive. "I was following procedure. My actions were justified based on the circumstances." A teacher spoke immediately after. There were no circumstances justifying targeting her. She posed no threat. Your assumptions were based on appearance alone. Carter's fingers drummed nervously on the table. His confident posture faltered as testimony mounted. Every witness chipped away at the authority he had wielded with casual arrogance. Zara listened, documenting each exchange, each reaction. Her mother's eyes were calm, a steadying presence. "Focus," she whispered once, reminding Zara to stay centered amid the tension. Questions were directed at Carter now. "Why did you escalate without verifying identities or consulting witnesses?" an official asked. I acted on experience," he stammered, the words hollow. "Experience does not justify racial profiling," a witness shot back. "Bias is not procedure." The panel exchanged glances, subtle acknowledgement that the officer's defenses were eroding. The room's energy shifted from bureaucratic formality to charged scrutiny. Each word spoken by witnesses and officials exposed systemic flaws and personal failings. Zara finally spoke, voice controlled but firm. "I was targeted for my skin, my age, my presence alone. The assumptions made about me were wrong, harmful, and unnecessary. Every action taken against me violated trust and procedure." Carter's jaw tightened. He attempted to interject, but the panel silenced him with a measured glare. Dialogue in the room became a series of controlled, piercing statements, accountability articulated through fact, emotion, and precision. The hearing lasted hours. Every denial, every rationalization, every effort to minimize the impact was countered with evidence, video footage, witness statements, timelines, and procedural references. The weight of accountability pressed down steadily, relentlessly. A pivotal witness, a local journalist who had captured part of the incident on live feed, stepped forward. "The public deserves transparency. We documented everything. This officer acted outside acceptable boundaries, and the evidence proves it." Carter's composure finally cracked. A subtle tremor in his voice, a hesitation in his gestures, revealed the growing pressure. Authority, once assumed, was now mediated by observation, fact, and scrutiny. Zara and her mother observed quietly, allowing the process to unfold. Every exchange, every rebuttal, every carefully constructed testimony reinforced the narrative. Systemic bias exists, and accountability can pierce even entrenched power. By the session's close, Carter was visibly shaken. Officials outlined potential disciplinary actions, including suspension and mandatory review. Public exposure, procedural documentation, and legal oversight had converged, dismantling the illusion of unilateral control he had relied upon. As they exited the hearing room, Zara exhaled, her mother beside her, calm but vigilant. The process was not over, but the trajectory had shifted irreversibly. The officer would face consequences, not just public scrutiny, but formal investigation and procedural accountability. Zara reflected on the day, the intensity of dialogue, the precision of language, the meticulous layering of evidence. Bias, she realized, could be confronted systematically, methodically, without surrendering to emotion. Persistence and strategy were critical, as was understanding the machinery of authority and oversight. Outside, the city hummed, oblivious yet observant in the quiet of afternoon traffic. Zara knew the exposure would ripple outward, influencing colleagues, observers, and bystanders. Systemic patterns could be challenged when prepared evidence intersected with public consciousness. The officer had survived the immediate confrontation, but cracks had formed, subtle, public, undeniable. Accountability had begun, and Zara understood its power. The meticulous orchestration of truth, witness testimony, and procedure could dismantle even entrenched prejudice. The precinct was quiet, almost eerily so, as Zara and her mother collected the remaining documents, witness statements, and official notices. The tension that had gripped the building for days at ease, replaced by a calm that spoke of both resolution and lingering unease. Every statement, every recording, every complaint is filed. Her mother said, voice steady, precise. The officer has been held accountable, but the system remains imperfect. Awareness and documentation are the only ways forward. Zara exhaled, leaning back in her chair. The adrenaline that had sustained her through interrogation, viral attention, and the public hearing was draining. Dialogue between mother and daughter was sparse, deliberate, each word carrying weight. "It feels surreal," Zara admitted. Her mother nodded. "It is." But don't mistake this outcome for normalcy. Bias, assumptions, and microaggressions persist beyond this incident. What we've done here is a demonstration. The mechanisms of accountability work when engaged strategically. Zara's thoughts drifted to the night of her arrest. The cold rain, the officer's grip, the indifferent bystanders. The humiliation, fear, and anger were still raw beneath the surface. Dialogue with her mother helped process it, transforming shock into understanding and strategy. Later, Zara met classmates who had witnessed a fundraiser. Conversations were intense, reflective, and emotional. Each exchange validated her experience while emphasizing the broader societal patterns, subtle prejudices, unspoken assumptions, and the courage required to resist them. News outlets continued coverage, analyzing the officer's misconduct and the role of public accountability. Zara observed the discussions with measured interest. Social media amplified both praise and criticism, a reminder that exposure was double-edged, protective and revealing, empowering yet exhausting. Her mother guided her through formal debriefs with officials and attorneys, reinforcing procedure over personal satisfaction. Justice is structural, not personal. Emotional satisfaction fades. Strategy sustains change. By evening, Zara walked through the city streets, observing faces, gestures, and patterns she had once overlooked. The awareness of systemic bias was sharper now, informed by experience and reflection. Dialogue with strangers, casual, transactional, carried subtle reminders of societal assumptions and coded language. She recognized resilience as laid, courage under duress, strategic engagement, and documentation of truth. The personal cost was clear: fear, trauma, and lingering vigilance. Yet, the victory, the officer held accountable, the public record established, offered clarity, not comfort. As night fell, Zara and her mother returned home. The house was quiet, lights casting soft shadows across polished surfaces. Dialogue faded into reflective silence. Both understood that exposure had ended one chapter, but not the ongoing engagement with systemic inequity. Zara paused by the window, watching reflections of streetlights on wet pavement. She felt the duality of relief and ongoing responsibility. Accountability had been achieved, yet vigilance remained essential. Dialogue, evidence, and strategic action would be necessary every time power was abused or assumptions weaponized. Her mother joined us silently, a hand resting lightly on her shoulder. The moment was quiet, deliberate, a shared acknowledgement of both triumph and cost. The officer's downfall was a marker, not an endpoint. Weeks had passed since the hearing. Zara walked through the familiar streets near her school, the city alive yet indifferent. Rain had returned occasionally, washing sidewalks and reflecting neon lights in jagged patterns. She moved with a cautious confidence, aware of the world's gaze and her own heightened perception of systemic bias. Dialogue in her everyday life felt different now. Teachers, classmates, and peers spoke with heightened respect, some out of genuine understanding, others out of cautious awareness of what had transpired. Conversations that once seemed trivial now carried undertones of observation and acknowledgement. Her mother's presence, though no longer physically constant, remained a guiding force. Phone calls, texts, and brief check-ins reinforced procedural awareness, personal safety, and strategic thinking. "Remember," her mother said one evening, voice calm over the line, "justice achieved in one case doesn't erase patterns elsewhere. Observation and documentation remain essential." Zara nodded silently, reflecting on the events that had transformed her life. From the arrest, through interrogation, viral exposure, public hearings, and finally, accountability, each stage had reinforced an understanding of systemic power and its vulnerabilities. Dialogue, when precise and evidence-driven, had dismantled assumptions, but emotional costs had been unavoidable. Returning to school, she met classmates who had witnessed a fundraiser. Conversations were reflective, at times tense, but always deliberate. Each statement, each recounting of events, reinforced a collective memory of injustice confronted. Social awareness had shifted subtly yet perceptibly. Zara also observed how Carter's suspension had resonated within the precinct. Colleagues whispered, procedural behaviors shifted, and the culture of unchecked authority showed minor but significant cracks. Dialogue between officers, though private, now carried caution and recalibration. Accountability, she realized could ripple outward even when immediate justice seemed complete. Evenings were quiet, marked by reflective silence. Zara journaled, documenting feelings, observations, and strategies for navigating public scrutiny and bias. The act of recording thought became both a therapeutic and tactical exercise, ensuring that systemic patterns remain identifiable and actionable. Her mother returned one weekend, and dialogue between them was both reflective and instructive. Strength, she said, is measured not only in confrontation but in the persistence of awareness. Trauma, vigilance, and strategic engagement coexist. Zara absorbed the lesson, realizing that resilience was layered. The ability to endure injustice, the capacity to act strategically, and the foresight to document and anticipate future encounters with bias. Each layer reinforced the other, creating a framework for navigating a world that remained uneven and unpredictable. As night fell, Zara walked past the streets where the arrest had occurred. The city was quiet, reflections of streetlights and puddles merging into abstract patterns. She felt the weight of both experience and knowledge, the personal victory, the systemic insight, and the ongoing responsibility. The officer had been held accountable, yet Zara knew the struggle against assumptions, bias, and structural inequities was far from over. The story's conclusion was not a finality, but a framework. Observation, documentation, and strategic action were enduring tools. Dialogue, precise and deliberate, would remain her strongest instrument. In the quiet of the evening, she felt a tempered sense of empowerment. The city moved on, indifferent yet observed. Zara stepped forward, conscious, resilient, and strategically aware, prepared to navigate a world that would continue to test her, yet equipped to respond with clarity and resolve. Months later, the city had settled into a fragile equilibrium. Zara moved through her routines with practiced vigilance, her awareness of systemic bias embedded into every interaction. Even casual encounters, teachers questioning late assignments, classmates debating presentations, strangers in hallways, carried subtle reminders of assumptions shaped by race, age, and gender. Dialogue in these moments was measured, intentional, and observant, a mental catalogue of behavior and consequence. The public attention from the arrest and hearing had faded from mainstream news, but online archives, social media posts, and official record preserved the incident. The officer's suspension, mandatory retraining, and formal reprimand were documented in both internal and public channels. Zara and her mother reviewed updates occasionally, noting procedural follow-ups and systemic responses to the case. Her mother's voice remained a constant anchor. Over calls, she reminded Zara, justice is rarely absolute. Exposure and accountability protect today, but patterns endure. Vigilance is strategic, not reactive. Zara absorbed this lesson daily, translating it into measured actions, careful observation, and methodical documentation. At school, she noticed subtle shifts among faculty and students. Conversations about accountability, bias, and procedure emerged naturally. Dialogue that had once been casual or dismissive now included acknowledgement of responsibility and recognition of systemic inequities. Zara understood this as incremental cultural change, fragile yet tangible. She met with friends and witnesses who had supported her, reinforcing the network of awareness and solidarity. Their conversations were deliberate, precise, recollections of events, shared observations, and mutual validation of experiences. Dialogue became both a tool for personal reflection and a mechanism for societal awareness. The officer, meanwhile, remained at the precinct but operated under increased scrutiny. Procedural compliance was now observed, every action potentially reviewed. Colleagues responded differently to him, some with quiet acknowledgement of his vulnerability, others with cautious distance. Accountability had left its mark, subtle but enduring. Zara reflected on the emotional cost. Trauma lingered beneath measured composure. Humiliation, fear, and anger had not vanished. Yet the deliberate confrontation, documentation, and strategic exposure had transformed vulnerability into agency. The experience had become a framework for responding to systemic inequities, a methodology for survival and influence. Evenings were moments of quiet reflection. Zara journaled, not just recounting events but analyzing patterns, behaviors, and systemic weaknesses. Dialogue within the journal, imagined conversations with authority figures or bystanders, allowed her to rehearse responses anticipate assumptions, and refine her own strategies. The act of writing reinforced clarity, precision, and psychological resilience. Her mother visited during one weekend. They reviewed the broader implications of the case, not just for Zara but for community awareness. Systemic patterns endure, she said, but intervention, strategic, documented, deliberate, can shift outcomes. Your experience serves as a model. Zara understood that victory in one confrontation did not eradicate the underlying currents of bias. The city, the schools, the precinct, and society at large remained complex, uneven landscapes. But the tools she had acquired, strategic dialogue, meticulous documentation, procedural engagement, and resilience, provided both protection and leverage. In the quiet night, standing by her window, Zara watched streetlights reflect in puddles, the city alive yet unseeing. She felt the duality of her existence, empowered, vigilant, aware of systemic injustice, yet burdened by its persistence. Dialogue, strategy, observation, and evidence had delivered accountability once, but she knew the struggle would recur. She was prepared,